The Last Shift. Chapter 1. The New Job. Alex Morgan had just started his new job as a night security guard at the old Hartman Industrial Complex. The place had a dark history, but Alex, desperate for a job, ignored the rumors. His shift started at 10 p.m. and ended at 6 a.m., just in time to see the sunrise. The complex was a sprawling maze of abandoned warehouses and offices long since closed down. It had been bought by a company looking to redevelop the area, but until then, it needed security. Alex's job was to patrol the premises, check the cameras, and ensure no one broke in. On his first night, a heavy rain began to fall, the kind that pounds the roof like 1,000 drummers. Alex sat in the small security office, watching the monitors. The screen showed various parts of the complex's long, empty hallways, deserted factory floors, and the occasional rat scurrying along the edges. Chapter 2. The Warning. At around midnight, Alex's radio crackled to life. It was his supervisor, Tom. "Hey Alex, just checking in. How's everything?" "All good, Tom. Just the rain for company," Alex replied, trying to sound cheerful. "Good. Just remember, if you see or hear anything strange, don't investigate. Just call it in, all right?" Alex frowned. "What kind of strange things?" "Just anything. This place has a reputation, you know. Some say it's haunted." Alex laughed. "You believe in ghosts, Tom." Tom's voice was serious. "I believe in being cautious. Just be careful." "Okay. Will do, Tom. Thanks." Chapter 3. The First Encounter. An hour later, Alex was making his rounds. The rain had intensified, and thunder rumbled in the distance. As he walked through one of the old warehouses, he heard a noise behind him. It was a soft, shuffling sound. He turned, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. "Hello? Anyone there?" Silence. Alex shrugged it off and continued his patrol, but the feeling of being watched lingered. Back in the security office, Alex reviewed the footage from his patrol. He paused when he saw a shadow move behind him in one of the hallways. Rewinding the tape, he saw it again, a dark figure slipping out of sight just as he turned around. Heart pounding, Alex grabbed his radio. "Tom, are you there?" "What's up, Alex?" "Hey. I think I saw something. A shadow, maybe a person." Tom's voice was calm. "Stay where you are. I'm sending someone over." Chapter 4. The Second Shift. The next night, Alex returned, more apprehensive than before. The rain was even heavier, and lightning flashed across the sky. Tom had assured him the place was secure, but Alex couldn't shake the feeling of dread. As he patrolled the office section of the complex, he heard a whisper. It was faint, almost drowned out by the rain. "Alex." He spun around, but no one was there. The hair on the back of his neck stood up. He quickened his pace, wanting to get back to the safety of the security office. When he reviewed the footage later, he saw something that made his blood run cold. In the same hallway where he had heard the whisper, a door slowly opened and closed by itself. Chapter 5. The Discovery. Determined to find out what was going on, Alex did some research on the complex. He learned that several workers had died there in accidents over the years. One particularly gruesome incident involved a worker named Samuel, who had been crushed by a faulty machine. His body was never fully recovered. Locals believed Samuel's spirit haunted the complex, seeking revenge or closure. Alex wasn't sure what to believe, but he knew something was very wrong. That night, as he made his rounds, he heard footsteps following him. He turned abruptly, but the hallway was empty. The lights flickered, and for a moment, He thought he saw a figure standing at the end of the corridor, but when he blinked, it was gone. Chapter 6: The Confrontation. On his fifth night, Alex decided to confront whatever was haunting the complex. Armed with a flashlight and a camera, he ventured into the depths of the old factory. The rain pounded harder than ever, and the thunder was deafening. He reached the room where Samuel had died. The air was colder here, and Alex's breath came out in white puffs. He called out, "Samuel, if you're here, show yourself." For a moment there was nothing. Then the temperature dropped even further, and Alex saw a shadowy figure materialize before him. It was a man, face twisted in pain and anger. "Why are you here?" Alex asked, voice trembling. The figure pointed to the machinery. Alex followed its gaze and saw a glint of metal. He approached and found a piece of bone lodged in the gears. It must have been part of Samuel's remains. Chapter 7: The Resolution. Realizing what he had to do, Alex carefully extracted the bone and said a silent prayer for Samuel. The figure seemed to relax, its features softening. Slowly it faded away, leaving Alex alone in the dark. The rain began to let up, and the thunder moved into the distance. Alex returned to the security office, feeling a sense of peace. He knew he had done the right thing. The next morning, Tom called. "How was the night, Alex?" "It's over, Tom. I think Samuel can rest now." Tom was silent for a moment. "Good job, Alex. See you tonight." Alex smiled. "Yeah, see you tonight." The complex was still eerie, but Alex no longer felt afraid. He had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. And as the sun rose, he knew he could handle anything that came his way. Chapter 8: New Threats. With Samuel's spirit seemingly at peace, Alex hoped his nights at the Hartman Industrial Complex would become routine. However, the unease returned almost immediately. During his next shift, as the rain continued its relentless assault on the roof, Alex felt an oppressive presence, different from Samuel's. The monitors flickered again, but this time, the shadows seemed to dance with malevolent glee. Objects moved in the periphery of his vision. The old clock on the wall stopped ticking precisely at midnight, only to resume an hour later with a loud chime that echoed through the empty halls. Chapter 9: The Stranger. One particularly stormy night, a visitor arrived at the security office, a man in his late 40s, drenched and looking frantic. He introduced himself as Dr. William Finch, a historian and paranormal investigator. He had heard about the recent disturbances and was eager to explore the complex. "Alex, you need to understand that Samuel's ghost might not be the only one here," Finch explained, his voice tinged with urgency. "This place has a history of tragedy, and spirits might still be restless." Though skeptical, Alex allowed Finch to stay. They agreed to conduct a more thorough investigation together. Chapter 10: The Investigation begins. Armed with cameras, recording devices, and thermal scanners, Alex and Finch started their investigation in the oldest part of the complex. The building creaked and groaned, each sound amplified by the storm outside. They first examined the old factory floor where Samuel had died. Finch placed a digital recorder on one of the workbenches and began asking questions. "Is there anyone here with us? Do you want to communicate?" For several minutes there was silence. Then, faintly, the recorder picked up a whisper. "Help. Me." Chapter 11: The Dark History. Finch and Alex delved deeper into the complex's history. They discovered records of other tragic incidents: a janitor who had fallen to his death from a faulty scaffold, an office worker who had been mysteriously electrocuted, and a security guard who had vanished without a trace decades ago. Each story was a piece of the puzzle, suggesting the complex was a magnet for sorrow and despair. Finch theorized that the spirits were bound to the site by their untimely deaths, unable to move on. Chapter 12: A New Entity. The nights grew more perilous. One evening, as Alex patrolled the basement, he felt an icy hand grip his shoulder. Spinning around, he saw a spectral figure, its face twisted in agony. It was not Samuel. This spirit was darker, its presence more oppressive. Finch reviewed the footage from Alex's body camera and confirmed the entity was likely the janitor who had died there. "We need to find a way to help him move on," Finch suggested. "Otherwise, his anger will only grow." Chapter 13: The Ritual. Finch proposed a cleansing ritual, something he had used in previous investigations. It involved a combination of prayer, salt, and candles, aimed at purifying the space and helping spirits find peace. Alex was skeptical, but willing to try anything to end the nightmare. They gathered the necessary items and set up in the basement, where the janitor had died. As Finch began the ritual, chanting softly, the temperature plummeted. Shadows writhed on the walls, and a low moaning sound filled the air. Suddenly, the candles flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. Alex felt a force trying to push him away, but he stood his ground, reciting the prayers Finch had taught him. Chapter 14: Confrontation. The spirit of the janitor materialized before them, its eyes glowing with rage. It lunged at Finch, who was barely able to dodge. Alex grabbed a handful of salt and threw it at the ghost. The entity recoiled, screaming in a voice that echoed through the complex. "Why are you here?" Finch shouted, trying to communicate. "What do you need?" The ghost pointed to a corner of the basement. Alex and Finch approached cautiously and found an old, rusted toolbox. Inside was a faded photograph of a woman and a young girl, the janitor's family. They had been left behind when he died, never knowing his fate. Chapter 15: The Resolution. With the photograph in hand, Finch and Alex conducted a final, heartfelt prayer for the janitor, asking for his spirit to find peace and reunite with his loved ones in the afterlife. Slowly, the oppressive atmosphere lifted. The ghost's figure softened, its eyes no longer filled with rage. "Thank you," it whispered before fading away. The storm outside began to abate, and a strange calm settled over the complex. Alex felt a weight lift from his shoulders. It was far from over, but they had made progress. Chapter 16: The Supervisor's Secret. As they prepared to leave for the morning, Tom arrived unexpectedly. His face was pale, and his eyes darted nervously. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his usual calm demeanor replaced by anxiety. Finch and Alex explained their findings and the ritual they had performed. Tom listened, his expression growing more troubled. "There's something I need to tell you," he said finally. "I wasn't completely honest about the complex's history." Tom revealed that he had been working at the complex since he was a young man. He had seen things, experienced things that he couldn't explain. But the worst was the night he found a security guard, his friend, dead in the basement under mysterious circumstances. He had always suspected something supernatural, but was too afraid to confront it. Chapter 17: The Final Haunting. With Tom's confession, the three men realized that the complex's dark energy stemmed from more than just tragic accidents. There was something older, more sinister at play. On their final night of investigation, they ventured into the oldest part of the complex, the original factory building, now in ruins. The air was thick with malice, and the walls seemed to pulse with a life of their own. As they explored, they found a hidden chamber, long forgotten. Inside, they discovered remnants of old machinery and strange symbols etched into the walls, symbols of dark rituals and sacrifices. It seemed the factory's original owner had dabbled in the occult, using the workers as unwitting participants in his experiments. Chapter 18: The Heart of Darkness. At the center of the chamber was an ancient altar, stained with what looked like blood. Finch's face went pale. "This is the source," he whispered. "This is why the spirits are trapped here." The air grew colder, and the ground trembled. A dark, shadowy figure emerged from the altar, more terrifying than any spirit they had encountered. It was the factory owner, bound by his own malevolent actions to haunt the site for eternity. The entity lashed out, its anger palpable. Alex, Finch, and Tom were thrown back by an unseen force. Desperate, Finch shouted, "We need to destroy the altar." Chapter 19, The Battle. With renewed determination, Alex grabbed a metal pipe and swung it at the altar. The stone cracked, and the entity screamed, a sound that shook the very foundations of the complex. Tom and Finch joined in, using whatever they could find to break the altar. As they smashed it to pieces, the dark energy began to dissipate. The shadowy figure writhed and twisted, its form disintegrating into nothingness. Finally, with one last strike, the altar shattered completely. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a calm, almost serene silence. The complex seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Chapter 20, The Aftermath. The next morning, the rain had stopped, and the sun shone brightly for the first time in days. The Hartman Industrial Complex, once a place of fear and despair, felt lighter, as if a great burden had been lifted. Alex, Finch, and Tom stood outside, looking at the old building with new eyes. "It's over," Alex said, a sense of peace washing over him. Finch nodded. "The spirits can finally rest." Tom, looking both relieved and exhausted, clapped Alex on the shoulder. "You did good, kid. You did good." As they parted ways, Alex knew his time at the complex had changed him. He had faced his fears, confronted the unknown, and emerged stronger. The darkness was gone, but the memories would stay with him forever.